Welcome to Lootbox and Store Editing in Dragon Age Inquisition Take 2. This time with a script, so hopefully it'll be more coherent. Before we get started, please take a moment to read the video description and make sure you've downloaded the files and installed the programs listed there. And if you've made Inquisition mods before, please skip ahead. I'm going to start with the basics. We'll be working in two different programs, ModMaker and HXD. We're going to start with ModMaker. ModMaker is launched from the Dragon Age tool suite, right here. And then you get this screen. The first time you start it up, it'll ask for the Inquisition installation directory, and then you'll have to wait a few minutes while it runs scans. That only needs to be done once, though on subsequent startups it'll still need about 30 seconds to load all the data because there is a lot of it. This is the data on which Inquisition is built. If you want to modify something, you'll need to find it in here first. And this is extremely important. Modifying stuff is the only thing you can do. In Inquisition files, you cannot add or delete things, you can only replace. If you add or delete even a single number in a file, then that file becomes completely unusable. So modding is done by replacing stuff only. Now let's get started on loot boxes and stores. Loot boxes in the base game are here, Dragon Age 2, 3 actually. Design content, loot objects. Stores in the base game are here. Equipment, stores. Loot boxes and stores from the downloadable content will be in their DLCs folder. DLC 1 is Jaws of Hakon, DLC Red is The Descent, and DLC Blue is Trespasser. We're going to begin with store modding, so let's take a look at a store file. This is Segred's shop in Haven. Something very important when using ModMaker, these two checkboxes need to be on at all times. This one is needed for finding stuff, and this one puts the stuff in the correct format for editing. Each file in Inquisition has basically the same structure. At the top we have two ID numbers. This is how the game recognizes which file it's dealing with. I'll call the top one EBX, I call the second one GUID. Those are not their actual names, I don't care. I have to differentiate between them somehow. Moving down, all of this is so us puny humans also know which file this is, because we can't identify stuff by 32-digit numbers. None of this is actually important to the game itself. And then we get to the items for sale list. Each member of this list is one item. Only 3 of all these bullet points are relevant to store editing. 1 is here, the link to the item itself. 2 is plot condition type, which tells the item if it's linked to a plot condition. Items linked to plot conditions will usually only spawn in the storage inventory when their condition is met, and it'll be something like the Inquisitor is a mage, or Inquisitor is at least level 10, stuff like that. And third and last, number in stock. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then at the very end of the file, we have the data for the store's prices. Each item in Inquisition has a base value that's stored in the individual item files. A store calculates its prices by multiplying each item's base value by these numbers. So this store right now is set to pay 15% of an item's total value to the player and sell its inventory for 100% of total value. There is one additional sale multiplier that I think is for items from Josephine's special offers perk. I'm honestly not 100% sure, but I always just set both sale values to the same thing just to be safe. So that's the file. Now let's get to editing. First of all, we can't do that in this screen because that would be convenient, and EA Games wants to make modders' lives as painful as physically possible. So we're going to extract this file by clicking Debug, Export EBX Binary. Save it somewhere we'll be able to find it easily and give it a recognizable name. Export it. Leave ModMaker open, but also find your saved file. If you've never worked with mods before, your operating system should at this point ask you which program to open EBX files with. Tell it HXD. Then when you open the file, you get something that looks like this, but not with this exact layout. So first we're going to set that so your screen looks exactly like mine. Go to Extras, Options, View, set your byte per row to 16 and your byte group size to 4. The top row of your file should now look like this, 0004080C. For those of you who have never seen this numbering system before, this file is in hexadecimal. That means that in addition to 0 to 9, like we're used to in the common decimal system, digits can also have values A through F, where A is 10, B is 11, C is 12, D is 13, E is 14, and F is 15, giving you 16 total possible values for every digit, hence hexadecimal. An EBX file consists entirely of hexadecimal numbers. For some values, there's an English description of what the numbers refer to, but for the most part, this is meaningless to humans. And that's why we still have ModMaker open. There are two ways to find stuff in an EBX file, by searching by hexadecimal value and by address. I'll deal with searching by address when we get to item amounts and pricing later. For now, searching by hexadecimal value. This is why that second checkbox here is so important. It changes the way ModMaker displays these values to match what's in the EBX file. With this on, we can copy EBX and GUID values shown in ModMaker and search for them, like this. Have your data type set to hex values, otherwise it's not going to find anything, and make sure your search direction is all. And there you go, that's the store's EBX. And here is the corresponding GUID. See? And that's how you find a single number, but we want to look at the store's inventory. Finding items requires one extra step, and that's clicking the item's link. And that takes you to the item's own file, where you will find its EBX and GUID. Searching for these values in the store file gets you here. Now in this layout, where one row is an item's EBX value, the row directly below it will be that same item's GUID. I'll just show you. And this continues. This is the EBX for the second item in the store. This is its GUID, EBX, GUID, EBX, GUID, etc. Until we stop here. The last line before data container, etc. This is the GUID of the very last item in the store's inventory list. Let me just show you. There. And this works for every store. Let's replace one item right now as an example. And we're grabbing this one. An amulet from Trespasser. Go into the EBX file, find the EBX and GUID of the store's first item that was here. Replace the EBX. Replace the GUID. One important note here, remember what I said earlier about not being able to add or remove as much as a single digit in an EBX file without breaking it? HXD is extremely helpful here. If you mess up, if you try to paste in more or fewer digits than you've selected, it will warn you, like this. When this happens, always click cancel so you can copy paste properly. So make sure you get the whole number and nothing more than the whole number, and save. Now we check in ModMaker to see if that worked. Go to store file, import EBX binary, select our EBX file, and ta-da, the first item on the list is indeed our amulet. Except, of course, we want more than one. So we want to change the number in stock. This is a little trickier because we can't search this file for a value of 1. It will just give us every single one in the entire file, which is useless. So we need to search by address. That's what the first checkbox is for. It shows the offset of every value in the ABX file. Offset is basically the same as address, and with our HXD layout being what it is, we can very easily read those addresses. Ignore all deleting zeros, they're not important. What we actually have here is 7D4. And that translates to row 7D0, column 04. That's here. These 8 digits. Now is the time to remember that this file is in hexadecimal, not decimal, so you can't just change this to the amount you want. You have to go online and find yourself a decimal to hexadecimal converter, and then BioWare added a little bonus challenge. Say we want to make, let me see, just write this down. Say we want 5,000 of this item. You would go online to a decimal to hexadecimal converter, enter your decimal value, convert, and we should be using 1388, but the Inquisition development team used the opposite endianness from every online converter ever made, or less technically, the number gives you here is in the wrong order for an Inquisition file. To get the number that you actually put in the ABX file, you take the result from the converter, put zeros in front of it until it's 8 digits long, split it in bits of 2 numbers, and reverse the order of those bits. This is the number you actually put in the ABX file. So let's do that. We have our address, 7D4, and here we have the 8 digits that we're going to replace. Copy our new number, save. Now let's check. And there we go, 5,000. And we now have the item we want at the amount we want. But do we have the price we want? Like most store modders, I prefer to make everything a bit cheaper than it is in base game, or pay more for items that you want to get rid of. So for that we have to change the buy and sell multiplier values down here. And here we have another bonus challenge. These values, unlike the amounts, are not integers or doubles like they should be. They're actually floats. If that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about it. Just know you have to use a different number converter or you'll get the wrong values. This is a float to hexadecimal converter. Remember that weird word I used earlier, endianness? Press swap on this and it will give you the number in the order that is usable by Inquisition. So all you have to do here is plug in the number you want. Let's say we want a 50% discount. Convert that to hex. Copy what the converter gives you. Ignore the 0 times part, not relevant. And put that in the EBX file for the for the cell multiplier at 784. So 784 here. No extra steps required. Just put this back in. And there you go. And of course, any number multiplied by 0 makes 0. So if you want your store inventory to be free, just change the cell multipliers to 8 zeros. Now you would think that this would be enough to replace stores, right? Nope. Unless you remembered what I said earlier about plot conditions, in which case, good job. Changing items linked to plot conditions is pointless because they won't spawn for some Inquisitors. And personally, I prefer to have my store inventories available exactly the same way in every playthrough. Presumably there is a way to disable that, but I haven't been able to find one that works consistently, so we're skipping all items with plot conditions. And that means we can't just blindly replace EBXs and GUIDs here. We have to keep track of which item we're on. Also, bear with me for a moment as we go off track. If you've used any store mods at all, you might have noticed that they usually have a larger inventory than the original store, which should be impossible because Inquisition doesn't let you add items, but it does let you swap items. And the store is just another item as far as the game is concerned. So what I've done for all of my store mods is I've taken the store with the largest inventory I could find, Dale's Keep, exported its EBX file, and swapped the store's ID numbers with those of another store. And then I changed the inventory and ported the modified Dale's Keep file into the store corresponding with the file's new ID numbers. And that gave me a large and, more importantly, consistent inventory to replace for every store that I make. Here's where my prepared files come in the Nexus download. Yeah, that's illegal. Check it out. The full inventory of the Dale's Keep store. EBXs, GUIDs, and amount addresses. Ready for your choice of replacements. I only didn't write down what items these numbers originally referred to because I didn't care. If that's important to you, then I'm afraid you'll have to look it up yourself. Then here we have a list of all the base game stores IDs, so you can easily replace those. Let me just show you how this works very quickly. You're going to export this. Let's give it a recognizable name. Keep to Haven. Find it. Get the EBX from here. Find that. And replace it with the EBX for the Haven store. And do the same for the GUID. Then you go to the Haven store in ModMaker, import, and this is now the Dale's Keep store. And like I said, all this stuff is not actually important for the game as long as these ID numbers are what the game expects to find in the Haven store file. It will accept this as the inventory for Haven. And then I also added prepared EBX files to the Nexus. This one is what I used as a base for my own mods. And I modified it to already have an amount of 999 for all items, and buy and sell multipliers are both set to 15%. So I strongly recommend you use Dale's Keep as your base, because it's the only one I actually wrote down all the inventory for. Now if you're using it, there are a few things you should be aware of. The first is that these items, which have plot conditions, I've ignored in my own mod making process. And the second is that these two amount locations and these two both refer to a single set of EBX and GUID. So both of these items will spawn twice, once with the first listed amount and once with the second listed amount. If you only want them spawning once, as I did, set the secondary amount value to all zeros and just use the first amount value for what you actually want to have in the store. Or just use my prepared EBX file since these are already set to 0 there. As my note here says, the EBXs and GUIDs come in blocks that can be overridden all at once. Let me show you. I'll use my Haven store data. In the Keep to Haven file, close this, we find the first number in the block, EBX and GUID. You can find them together like this. and replace that with the first replacement item. And that turns the line red until you press save. Don't do that yet. We need that color change to mark the starting point. Now we find the endpoints, the GUID of the last item in the block. This is where our green dataset ends. Start selection here at the very end and select everything until you get to the red line. Now copy the replacement block, except for the first number, because we've already done that. Back to HFD, paste. There, that was about a third of the store inventory. We can do the same thing for the other two sets, only these two items have to be replaced individually because they're surrounded by items with plot conditions. So yeah, inventory replacement is super easy as long as you're working with these Excel files. The amounts do have to be done by address again, but there is a pattern to them that makes it easier. I'm just going to override a few really quickly so you can see it. Start 1 to a 4. As long as items are in a set, the amount offsets follow this pattern with the lines going down diagonally from left to right. Between sets you do need to pay attention because those will be in odd places, but in sets you can just find the first amount and replace according to the pattern without constantly looking at each individual address. Then the pricing information, these locations, set that to whatever you want. And the store is whatever you want it to be. That should be enough to let you make store mats. Now that we've done that, loot boxes will be super easy because it's basically the same process. First of all, you can't edit every single drop in the game. Most of them spawn items randomly selected from a list of options. Only a few per area have predetermined loot that we can control. For these, I again used a single file as base, specifically Haven crafting mats, because at 12 slots it's much larger than any other loot object in the game. Here, setting the block conditions to all zeros actually consistently deactivated them, so all items drop for all characters. And again, that's already been done in my prepared file, so you don't really need to worry about it. Unlike stores, loot boxes have two amounts, a minimum and a maximum. You can just change both of them to the same value and it'll drop that exact amount every time. Like Bill's Keep, Haven Crafting Mats has two amounts that link to one set of EBX and GUI, this one. And in loot boxes that can actually be an advantage because you can only drop a single piece of equipment per loot box slot. Changing the amounts when it comes to equipment items won't actually make extra equipment spawn. I did check that. The amount only works on stackable items like crafting materials. But if you want two daggers, you can put the daggers EBX and GUI in the spot of the double spawning item and then set both of these amounts to 1. And then you got two copies of that dagger. Now, replacing items here is even easier than in stores because we can already see where they are in the EBX file. They are between the zeros trailing the lootbox ID and the data container blah 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 stuff. These are the 11 EBXs and GUIs, and you can replace them just like that. if you want to mess with prologue loot, you might find this sheet useful. It has the EBXs and GUIs of these loot boxes. And when deciding where to put which piece of loot, keep the order encountered in mind, because it does not match the order of the files. And you'll probably want to put armor and weapons in the first 2 or 3 drops, so you can use them right away. Also included in the Nexus link in the video description are a few Excel files that contain EBXs and GUIs of a bunch of items that I used in my own mods and wrote down for that. Hopefully those will contain everything you need. Anything else you'll have to find yourself in ModMaker's files. And that should be all the information you need. If you have questions, please contact me on the Nexus. I really never visit YouTube. I'm the author of the mod linked in the description. All resources are provided here and on the Nexus are free for your use. Just please make sure to give proper credit, because hey, putting all this together took a lot of time, and I'd appreciate knowing when other people are making use of it. Other than that, good luck with your modding, and I look forward to seeing your creations.